themselves. You do have control of your mute button, but please, let's be careful with it today because this is a working meeting and we are videotaping. So I'm Nancy Shepard and president of the League of Women Voters this year. And I'm here with Lisa Ratner, who is our second vice president of advocacy. This is pretty much her meeting and your meeting. We are here today to do the Zoom version of our using Zoom platform for our grassroots priority setting for both our local league, Palo Alto League for the next year, and also the State League of California. This is for members. So all of you are members and welcome to our membership meeting. This is kind of our come to home membership meeting where we are going to learn about what our advocacy and issue groups have been doing and then rank where we want to go from here on issues. So and we will be videotaping this. And so, and we are not going to edit it. We can edit the beginning and the end. That's about our limit for today, but we know that not everybody who's a member can join this meeting and we want them to participate in this portion of our annual prioritizing. Do you want to go ahead and share the screen, Lisa? Are you controlling the share the screen on this with your PowerPoint?
Yeah, let's see, share screen.
And then I'm going to let you go through the first two slides because I've done my introduction and then I'll jump in with the roadmap. So.
Okay, so what is program planning? It's an opportunity.
Actually, could you go ahead and launch the presentation portion of this PowerPoint? So either press F5 or launch the presentation because right now it's in. Yeah, go up to the top and do slideshow or whatever it is that you do.
To get the full screen.
To get the full screen.
I think it's under slideshow.
Or press F5.
Okay.
Yeah. We have practice, just so you guys know.
I did press F5. Is the slide not showing up?
No, we can see the slide, but it's in the working form. So it's not in the presentation form.
Oh, okay,
so,
let me see here. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so we don't want to see all of the slides. We see like 5 slides right now.
Okay, can you see it? Can you see this? Okay, slideshow. I got it.
Yes.
Is that it?
Nope, not yet.
Go to slideshow and do play from start on the far left, I think.
Or presenter view. Oh, no. Yeah.
Play from start? Okay.
Yep.
How about that?
There we go. Bingo.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay. All right. So where are we?
We're right here. If you want to say a few words, then we'll go into the roadmap.
Okay. Program planning is an opportunity for us to influence the issues that state and local leagues will focus on for the next 2 years. And our goal is to propose 3 issues to emphasize for state and local community education and advocacy work. Here's our roadmap. We will first talk about the California issues, and then we'll talk about the Palo Alto issues. And the Palo Alto issues, each of the 5 committees will make a presentation with an opportunity for the folks here to ask them questions. And then we'll have a discussion about what issues we should be focusing on. And at the end of that discussion, we'll ask folks to put in their chat what their 3 issues are. So before we start, I want to make sure everybody remembers that what the league's mission is. It's to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. It operates at the national, state, and local levels through leagues. We never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates, but we are political. And we engage at the local, state, and federal levels of government. What were the priority issues for the State League for the years 2019 to 2021? They were making democracy work, which is all the wonderful voting rights work that a lot of you here have participated in. Voter protection and service, election reform, money in politics, and redistricting. They also had schools and community first, which was an initiative on the ballot. Climate change was a priority issue. Housing and homelessness directed to increasing the supply of housing and the affordability of housing. Also criminal justice reform. And all of this was looked at through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. Now, what are some of the wins, big and small, in these areas? In making democracy work, the state responded to COVID. It observed polling locations. It found new ways to engage young people and low propensity voters, expanded voting rights for 50,000 Californians on parole. It advocated for same-day voter registration, that passed, and local redistricting under the Fair Maps Act, which is different from the Federal Voting Rights Act in that it recognizes communities of interest and makes partisan gerrymandering not legal in California. The Schools and Community First, which was the Prop 13 reform, was defeated at the 2020 elections, but there are some smaller victories, including taking part in the largest signature gathering effort in California history and building partnerships with new organizations raising this issue. In climate change, there are a series of small victories that build on bigger pieces of legislation, including SB 100, which sets a goal of 0 carbon emissions for the state's retail electricity supply by 2045, and also support for the state's executive order to conserve 30% of working and natural lands to store and remove carbon from the atmosphere. Some bills were stalled because of COVID, but they're going to continue to build on the reforms so that California can lead in tackling climate change. They set up a League of Women Voters state climate task force, and there are committees at the state level which you are most welcome to apply to and join. So if you're interested in working on a state issue, there's the state climate task force. On housing and homelessness, they set up a new state level committee, and they have a new homeless policy that they adopted. This homeless committee, housing committee, and homeless task force and action policy will act as a clearinghouse of knowledge. This is a very, very complex issue, how to solve the affordable housing and homelessness problem, which is at an emergency level in California. The Housing and Homeless Task Force is ready to help local leagues and the state league to hone its advocacy and educational work. Past advocacy on housing and homelessness included support for SB 35, which streamlines approval for infill housing developments, which provide at least 10% of units for lower income households. The Build Homes and Jobs Act, which recognized the importance of establishing a permanent source of state funding dedicated to affordable housing, and imposed a minimum $75 transaction fee on documents used to transfer property. I was just looking at this particular piece of legislation this morning, and it turns out that our local jurisdictions can actually submit a plan to the Housing and Community Development Department of the state and ask for money under this funding mechanism, including there's 20% of these funds are supposed to be set aside for affordable workforce owner-occupied housing, which is something I didn't know about. Also, the State League backed a bill which allows cities and counties to require a certain percentage of rental units to be affordable to moderate and low-income households in new developments. In criminal justice reform, the major win was supporting the passage of the Racial Justice Act, which allowed convictions to be challenged for racial discrimination at all stages of the trial, from the charging, through the jury selection, through the statements before the jury, through the sentencing. The State Criminal Justice Committee and local leagues and local league criminal justice committees have sprung up, and they're boosting the state's legislative work. And they're also building relationships with local partners and officials, sharing resources and finding ways to take action locally on criminal justice reform, and particularly racial justice in criminal justice reform. And that is your update on what the state has been doing. I think Nancy's going to talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that robust update for the state. As many of you are aware, the League is working hard to bake the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything we do in a very self-conscious and mindful way. So as we move through our priority setting right now, there will be a layer of DEI in our resolve to accomplish things. The state and the local levels, we've all passed resolutions regarding systemic racism. And so this will be part of the elements of how we move our issues forward. You've probably seen this image showing the difference between equity and equality. But what does DEI really mean? Diversity has many forms. It includes race and ethnicity, gender and gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, language, culture, national origin, age, and different levels of physical ability. We want to increase diversity both within the League and in terms of the coalitions we partner with. The idea of equity recognizes that not everyone starts from the same place, and that we need to engage in active work to challenge and respond to bias, harassment, and discrimination. And that promoting fairness and justice means paying special attention to those issues. Inclusion means making deliberate efforts to ensure that the League is a place where differences are welcomed, different perspectives are respectfully heard, and where people feel a sense of belonging. Lisa?
Yep. Okay. Okay, we're now at the point where we need to have a discussion about what we want the state to focus its time and money on in the coming 2 years. And the state has asked us to list up to 3 ranked choices. And they want us to be as specific as possible in our recommendations. And they want us to state both the issue that you want the state League to focus on and what you want them to do. Should the focus be on community education? Should it be on concerted action in the legislature or before state agencies? Shall the state develop toolkits for local League action? So another thing they want to know is who in our League would be willing to work on a statewide committee on that issue. So when we get to the end and you're putting in your chat what your choices are, please state whether you're willing to work on a statewide committee on this issue. We ask for names because the League is a grassroots organization. There is no group of other people out there willing to work on the issues that you suggest. The State League is all of us, and the way we get things done at the state level is by volunteers from local leagues working together. Okay, so I think we're ready to open this up for member discussion of state issues. And I've listed climate change, housing and homelessness, criminal justice reform, and redistricting. Now, this redistricting is going to happen whether we tell them to do it or not. That's part of making democracy work. And the redistricting issue for us at the local level is kind of interesting because Our city does not have any districts. We are an at-large city. So where most other cities, including Menlo Park, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, or surrounding cities, have these redistricting issues and local leagues there, will probably be focusing pretty heavily. It's thought that's what the state league wants us to do on local redistricting. We in Palo Alto don't happen to have that particular issue. We do have county districts, and the county supervisors districts will have to be redistricted according to the census data, which is not going to come out until July or August. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Redistricting is going to be there. But we're kind of open. I think the state is open to having us come up with the issues that we think are important. So I'd like to open it up now to anybody who wants to make a statement about what state issues should be, what specifically they should be focusing on. And we can do that either in the chat or you can raise your hand.
Lisa, can I recommend that we pause the screen share right now so we can see each other during this conversation?
Okay.
And then we already do have some chat coming in. Someone's already ready to vote. Megan Sweezy Fogarty says, do we have it to choose just among these issues? And
No, those are not the only, these are just suggested issues. But I think climate change and housing and homelessness will continue to be state priorities, no matter what we say. But who knows? Maybe somebody will come up with something. Maybe there'll be a grassroots movement for some other issues. But the other thing you should remember is that even though these are priority issues, it doesn't mean the state league stops working on other issues. Even if criminal justice is not up there, they're going to continue to spend their time and effort on lobbying for criminal justice reform, water issues. There's a whole range of issues. If you ever go to the state league website, what issues are we lobbying for? You can see there's a whole range of issues that they lobby for. They just want us to tell them what we think the most important ones are. Doesn't mean they're not going to be working on other issues. Same for us. Our local choices will just highlight what we think our most important priorities are. But if people are on committees that don't rise to the level of a priority, they're still going to be working on it. So, Janet.
I'd like to have community education on that. As you can see, in the past 4 years, that's highly needed. Otherwise, we won't have sustainable government.
What would you like community education on?
On basically what we do in iCivics on our program.
Okay, civics. Okay, great. That's a very important suggestion.
okay, we have 2 raised hands. If I can figure out where they are. One of you, I'm sorry.
One is mine.
Okay, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So this year, Palo Alto and most cities throughout the state are either going to be completing or beginning to develop their housing element. This is a big year for housing. There's major legislation that's going to come at the state level. The cities are really going to need the state league to take an active stance. We can't do advocacy really at the state level, and housing is a big issue. As you know, it's very contentious in these cities, and I'm hoping our local league, but also the state league, can make this a focus.
Okay, great, thank you. Who else has a raised hand? Mary.
Mary.
Sorry about that. I had to find my unmute button. Yeah, no, I really want to echo Janet's comment about teaching civics. And I know we already have civics, but taught in the schools. But, you know, is it being taught at the grade school level? At some point, there seems to be a massive disconnect these days in sort of the understanding of many aspects of how government works. And I
Right.
think that's crucial to make a democracy work or to make any system work if people understand how it works, how change happens, how to make change happen. So yes, I would just like to echo Janet's comment.
Right.
Liz Nis is trying to put her, oh, she's got her hand up, and then Raven.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
So adding to, aside from the fact that Steve Levy's comments are really important, and I admire Steve and have been working with him for a long time, particularly on the housing issue, and that I think is paramount. The other one, though, that I'm somewhat surprised not to see is COVID and the economy. We're beginning to make a dent. I was on a county call this morning. We're starting to make a dent. The dent isn't visible yet. And the question will be, after we're all vaccinated, how comfortable will we be with each other? Will we continue to support the businesses that have really suffered during this? So I'm somewhat fearful that we'll look at the vaccination as the aha, now it's all over. And it's not going to be like that, which is regrettable. But I think that we really need to we need to tie in the economic impacts that the COVID has had, and how do we go forward from here, continuing to support that part of the economy that has really suffered.
Thank you, Raven, and then Ellen Smith.
Hi. So I just want to say I'm having an extremely hard time choosing three. There are so many issues that are so important right now. I do agree, just looking at the chat, with what Miss Jeannie said. Race and racism underlie so much, especially when it comes to housing, when it comes to police reform, equity, even when it comes to education. Race and racism are extremely underlying issues that need to be addressed. So I don't know how really to choose three and say that I want to. I guess equity would be a good start. So for me, it would definitely be equity and housing, because homelessness is a huge problem in the Bay Area in California, and it's only gotten worse since COVID, which is absolutely heartbreaking for me. And like Liz Nis said, I agree that we also need to have something to do with a COVID or post-COVID kind of economy rebuild, because I mean, we're seeing businesses close. Anytime I go outside and walk downtown, there are so many businesses now that are for lease. There are so many people who are being pushed out of their homes or evicted, even though they shouldn't be. They're just, I'm sorry, I don't want to take up much time, but I guess I don't really, so I guess COVID relief, equity, and housing or homelessness.
Thank you, Ellen Smith, and then Diane Rolfe.
Okay, sorry. Well, two things after what Raven said. I think we could make an emphasis that whatever we choose, we have the notion of equity underlying it, because the same with climate change, the same with criminal justice, they all have issues of equity under them. And I think we could really emphasize that. But I have a concern about talking about COVID and business, because in order for the league to take action, we have to have a position on which to base that action. And I'm not sure what we have that would support what kind of action we could take to address what's happening with COVID and the economy. So if somebody has an idea about that, how we would address it, I would welcome hearing that. That's it.
Yeah, let me just respond to that. I think that everything the league does in terms of public policy is going to have that equity approach. So for example, in COVID relief, we want to make sure that funds are going, inoculations are going, housing is going to the most severely impacted folks in our communities. And that's an area where the league could advocate for in terms of economic development. Just make sure that we're identifying the folks who have been most impacted, and that would be, the frontline workers and the folks living in crowded housing, folks who don't have childcare, that sort of thing.
So I've got Diane Rolfe, followed by Stacy Ashland, and then Gail Price.
I think the comments made so far have all been very excellent and thought-provoking. But I think underneath all of it is the lack of equity that faces our children from birth on. We're talking about racism, lack of opportunity. I think housing is critical. It depends upon the survival of our city as a viable structure 50 years from now. We have to house people. We have to give kids all equal start. Equity is the key. We have to fight racism. We have to fight caste. We must bring forth a sense that we are all equal in our democracy, in our votes, in our participations. We must build community. We have an opportunity now at a time of great national disaster between the pandemic and literally almost losing our democracy. In fact, we got a lot of work to do, but equity is the key, giving every child an equal start.
Thank you. Lisa, you ready for Stacy?
Yeah.
Stacy, you need to unmute.
Thanks, sorry. Something that I put in the chat, but it's a lot of other speakers have just mentioned along the same lines. What I put in the chat was that criminal justice reform should be broadened to the concept of racial equity and anti-racism efforts, not just as related to criminal justice, but more as a preventative measure before people of color especially are faced with the injustices of the criminal system. Yeah, so basically, when I look at those 4 state priorities of climate, housing, criminal justice, and redistricting, it's good to say DEI underlies everything, but I really think we need to elevate equity. Just like COVID and the economy are the hot issue right now because of COVID, and we don't know when it's going to end. I think what we've seen this past year regarding the Black Lives Matter movement is we would be sorely remiss to not elevate equity to that level. I don't know, but I suspect that the population, the membership of League of Women Voters is perhaps not representative of the racial equity in the state. If that
Thank you. Gail. Please unmute.
Yeah, okay, good. Hi, everybody. I think for me, the homelessness, the issue of climate change, and criminal justice are all important. As it relates to homelessness and housing affordability, within the housing and homelessness community, people within it or providers of services clearly recognize that housing first is a key component to helping communities and individuals stabilize, build a sense of community, and be safe. And housing is also related to climate change, because if we have compact infill housing, then we are being more responsible in terms of sustainable housing over time. The other thing is, in terms of criminal justice related to housing, there's issues of structural racism. And the fact is, many people who are on parole or are released from incarceration have tremendous difficulties finding housing. Often they end up as homeless or at risk of homelessness, and that continues to be a cycle of tragedy, frankly. So I think all of these, climate change, housing, and criminal justice, are very much interwoven. And the issue of equity and social justice and racial justice apply to all of these categories. So I think it would be very smart for the league to recognize the relationships among these subtopics as they relate to the human condition and public health. COVID also interrelates with the criminal justice issues, climate change issues, and housing. So those are my three, with housing as one of the overarching issues related to social and racial justice.
Thank you, Lisa. I don't see any more hands up.
Katie.
But what I would like to announce is Steve Levy has volunteered to be part of it. Oh, okay, Jean, you don't have it. I'll get to you. Steve Levy has agreed to be part of the state conversation on housing. So we've got one name put in. And go ahead, Jeannie. And for those of you that want to put your hand up virtually, there's that little button you can use, and you kind of queue up nicely for me to be able to identify you.
Hi, everyone. I think the point about race is that it is the undergirding issue for every other topic we mentioned, from housing to climate change to COVID. Every single thing has a racial component to it, which means that brown and black folk don't get properly served. So here's what I think is that a statement that regardless of which three we choose, climate change, housing, whatever, but regardless of which three we choose, we want to state, or we would be interested in making a condition that every issue has to engage the differential effect of all of that on people of color, or the privilege that comes to white folks like me.
Thank you. Kevin Ma.
Yeah, I put my choices someone related to what I think the legislature is going to be focusing on. We know that the legislature is going to be focusing a heavy amount of time this year going to be on any kind of COVID recovery efforts. We've seen that with the eviction moratorium that just passed like a week ago, as well as the housing element updates, which are happening now in Southern California, will begin to happen in the Bay Area soon. I also put criminal justice reform for the equity impact, but we also have to recognize like I didn't put climate change on there, for instance, mainly because it is an important one, but it's not like should the league focus on it, given that that space is incredibly packed with a lot of other groups. So I do want to put that in the context of like, what do we add onto this larger lobbying field?
Thank you, Kevin. And Mary?
Hi, am I unmuted? Yes. Okay. So I think everybody knows I'm big in climate change, and I actually, Kevin, I'm not going to say disagree with you, but the issue that we bring to light in climate change, which we've done at both the state level and now we're doing at the local level, are the issues of equity. Because as we move, you guys will hear about this, but so for instance, they're pushing for the electrification of Palo Alto, which is awesome. But if it's not done in a manner that is zoning or additional funding for multi-family dwellings and all those other issues that no one has brought to light except for the league at the state level, then it's not going to be done in an equitable manner at all. It will be only the people who can afford to move to being electric will move, and then within about 2030, the CEC predicts that there's going to be this enormous gap between what people are paying and the people who least can't. So anyway, so that was too much time, but I think climate change exacerbates every issue from housing to education. So for me, climate change is paramount, and the lens that we bring is not just the technology and the support for adaptation mitigation, but that it must be done in a manner that is equitable.
Thank you, Mary. You've been teaching me a lot about environmental justice, and so you've spoken to this right now. Thank you. Are there others that want to raise their hand via the Zoom hand raising, or if not, you're going to have to flag me down? Lisa, I think we can turn it back to you.
Okay, so at this point,
Like to
please-
share your screen again, maybe?
okay, let's see.
Can I just say, I was taking notes in case people wonder, and so later we'll go over what I got out of what everybody said.
Right, thank you, Kathy. So if you guys could take an opportunity either now to put in chat what you think the state issue should be, or make sure to do it at the end of this meeting, so we have a record of it. And list them. If you feel that you can rank them, do so. If you can't rank them, then, you know, if everything seems equally important, say that. We will.
Can I just add, I basically made a list. I just put it in there in the chat that includes the things that were, it's not very well structured in the chat, but includes the things that I identified as being what people said.
Okay, thank you very much.
We can take a minute to have Kathy summarize it for us. And Lisa, if you want to advance your slide, you'll see what we'd like you to put in chat. There we go. Do you mind if Kathy just does a quick summary of what you put in chat?
I could do a screen share, but I think, Lisa, did we want to do that later?
No, let's talk about it now, since we are talking, we're dealing with the state issues at this point.
Okay, well, maybe it'll be easiest if I share the screen to show what I had. So you'd have to stop sharing.
Okay.
Sorry, this is a little messy. So here's what I have as the proposed. One was the redistricting, which the state's going to work on no matter what. Housing and homelessness, criminal justice reform. My question raised by everyone is, should we include or just say focus on racial equity and anti-racism efforts? Somebody mentioned interactions with the system both before and after an arrest, I suppose, or some kind of not just after you're arrested, but to prevent interactions with the system. I have redistricting twice, sorry about that. And then community education, civics education, and then post-COVID economy, how to go forward from here. And post-COVID education was mentioned in the chat, dealing with learning loss that's happened. Then we had racial equity and racial justice, which overlies everything, but also we could say we think that should be its own category of work. And then the idea for state level work on voter registration and voter education in the schools. Does that seem like a good synopsis? Did I miss anything key?
Climate change. Oh, you've got climate change in the right under redistricting, and then also
let me give it a number.
One of the pieces that Lisa has explained to me with redistricting is observers for redistricting, because we will get redistricting with our local reps to Sacramento and the national federal representation.
Right.
Is redistricting one of the three that we would choose, or we just let the state do that and we don't have to pick it?
When we get to the local issues, we can decide that we will focus on redistricting. I was just pointing out at the beginning that it's not our city that's being redistricted. It'll be our county, and once the data, census data comes out, our local state representatives, those districts. And the league spent an incredible amount of time passing and explaining to the legislature what fair maps means. And they did this in conjunction with Common Cause. And it's quite an eye opener. They talk about communities of interest as well as minorities, and it's an attempt to depoliticize, to take power actually away from folks who are in power because they've drawn the district lines in a way to preserve the votes for them. So, and to focus more on communities of interest that need to be represented.
Lisa, can you clarify the point about who's going to work on it on the state level? Is the implication if you vote for it, you need to say, I'm going to work on the state level? What if you're working on it locally? How does that all work? What does that mean?
No, the state would, if you are interested in this issue and you want to work on it, the state league has a huge districting Google group you can join, and then you can volunteer to observe the local independent redistricting commissions that will have been or are being set up on the local level. So you can do it on both local and state. So as things progress, as census data comes forward, we'll have a better idea as to what exactly is going to happen to our local districts, our local lines. So it's going to happen whether we vote for it or not. It's something that I think most of us here in the Palo Alto League don't know much about because it hasn't affected us because we're an at-large city, so we haven't been thinking about it.
I do remember last time when this happened and East Menlo Park was separated from Menlo Park proper with Jackie Spear and Anna Eshu. And so this does matter, and it's not something that we shouldn't have on our radar.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come up the closer we get to the convening of our local redistricting commission for state legislature.
I'm going to share again quickly because of a comment by Megan, the suggestion to put the post-COVID education and economy in one item.
Yes.
So just a thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, also remember, if any of these issues grab you from the point of view of wanting to do state policy, put that in your chat. Say, I'm willing to work with the state league committees on these issues. They'd love to have us.
So Lisa, if you'd like to share your PowerPoint again, we could probably wrap up. I think we're asking everybody to rank in chat because we will be recording from chat today. We're not going to be doing a vote like we've done in the past where we have these little, heat graphs that come up and tell us how everybody's voting. But we wanted to capture it in rank so that we could weight it after our program today. And then if we're finished with state, we can move into our local league.
Can Kathy show the list again?
Oh,
okay. Let me.
Sorry, that's what we're ranking, right? Her list.
No, you can also put something that's not on the list if nobody mentioned it, and that's something that you are interested in. For example, I had a conversation with somebody the other day who said health reform is her #1 issue, and she would love the state to work on that, healthcare reform.
okay. Let me know when. Is that good enough? Everybody got the list in their heads, or I can put it back in the chat too.
I want to just.
Okay, so we are. Oh, 10:45. Okay, 45 minutes. I think we're right on track to move on to local issues. Is that shared? Yes. Okay, let's go here. So we're now talking about.
I don't think it is. We don't see a shared screen right now.
Okay. Okay, let me go down here. What happened to my Zoom? Where is it? End of slideshow. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's state.
Yeah, and go ahead to the slideshow and start the slideshow from where you left off.
Okay. Okay, here we are. Local issues. So what have our local issues been for the past 2 years? Climate change, affordable housing and homelessness, civics education, local election finance reform, which actually I think we adopted it's the COVID thing has completely messed up my sense of time. It was 2 years ago. And responsible gun ownership. And in order to keep the members up to date on what each of these committees, how these issues have been handled by our committees, I'm going to turn it over to each of our committee chairs, who will give a brief overview of what they've been doing, and after which what they hope to work on, and then we'll give people 5 minutes or so to ask some questions. And we'll start with housing and transportation.
Okay, Lisa, do you want me to present?
Yeah, please.
Sure. So,
Are you
although,
sharing a screen on anything, Steve?
no, there's a video on the YouTube and I'm just going to talk. Okay?
Okay.
So, though we're called the Housing and Transportation Committee, for the 3 years I've been chair, we've worked exclusively on housing. We chose not to get involved in the Great Separation issue. The committee does two things. We write letters for the board approval to be presented to council and the planning commission on housing projects and housing related issues. And we host or partner with other organizations to host educational events. We've been in hiatus a bit through 2020, but we started again, and the board has approved and Nancy has signed 2 letters on housing projects that will go before council on Monday. The big issue for Palo Alto this year is developing a housing element that's compliant with our regional housing needs goal of 6,000 units. And that means identifying sites and developing policies that will incentivize builders to bring forth projects. Most of those projects are for low and moderate income residents, which is in keeping with our charter. Personally, I see housing in Palo Alto as directly related to climate change. And at the end of this is a plea both for folks who want to join the committee, we've been a little short, and to see whether this is a issue that the local league really wants to promote this year. If we don't do it, the opportunity to weigh in on the housing element will be gone. So the big deal, and one of the reasons that Palo Alto got 6,000 units, well, there are 2 reasons. One is equity, one is climate change. Cities that are great places to raise your family, have good schools and good amenities were singled out for an above average share of low-income housing to try and not segregate low-income housing in poor neighborhoods, but build opportunities in great places to live. But the second piece of the allocation, which again pushed more units into Palo Alto, was reducing regional commuting. If you're a low-wage worker and you work anywhere on the peninsula and live anywhere on the peninsula, that's a whole heck of a lot better than commuting 90 miles a day from Manteca or from Antioch or from Pittsburgh. And so it's a major greenhouse gas emission, vehicle miles traveled, commuting reduction, which is not only climate change, but it's equity too, because those workers are spending 2 to 3 hours away from their family, away from their kids. So I'll stop more. If we have a really good committee, we're going to weigh in on housing projects this year in the housing element.
So anybody have questions for Steve? Okay. Thank you, Steve. That was a great presentation. Next, we have the chair of our Natural Resources Committee.
Hi, that's me. I'm trying to figure out how to get, oh, I can share my screen here. Hold on. So I'm Mary O'Kicki, and I am the host disabled participant screen sharing. So someone's got to let me share my screen so I can show the presentation. But while that's going on, so I'm Mary. I think I know a lot of you guys. And first thing I'm going to say is thank you to Hillary Gland, because she will now be co-chair of our selected window application that you want to share my screen. She is the co-chair of the NRC. So thank you, Hillary. And I think everyone knows Hillary very well. She is, I'm still trying to find this. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. Here it is. Great. Can you guys see this or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
just going to start the video.
Oh no, the video didn't work. It was a long.
The presentation.
Yeah. So I just have to start. Okay, here we go. Uh-oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. Oh well, we'll let it run through.
Is it supposed to be making sound? Because I'm not hearing anything.
Okay.
You just narrated, Mary.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, I'm like wasting all the time when this is such a simple thing to do. 2.6, here we go, right here. From beginning. 2.6. Okay. So we already said that we echo the state's policy position, which is that we promote the management of natural resources interrelated.
You're not sharing.
Oh dear. All right, escape out of that. I didn't share that. I'm back to saying I've been disabled from sharing.
Do I have your slides or not?
You should. It still says, it says okay. Let's try this again. Share screen. Right here. Okay, share. Am I up? Yes. Okay, thank God. Okay, so state's policy position. As everyone knows, we promote the management of natural resources as interrelated parts of life supporting ecosystems. What does it actually mean though? Oh my God. Let's just play it through. I'm sorry. So the committee engages in education and advocacy efforts that can have an impact on any area of natural resource management. So water, land use, energy, wildfire, electrification of buildings, certainly climate change. So our positions are science-based and data-driven. There's an emphasis on equity or environmental justice. So what does that mean? Sorry.
Maybe you can pause it.
I think if you hit F5 or the arrow key, you can forward it at your own speed.
F5. Okay. Well, it's running as a and so wow, what a disaster. Steve, if only you had done a PowerPoint presentation, I wouldn't have been the first to do this. So the okay, I'm gonna pause.
Hi, we're going through the issues.
Goodbye.
I'm saying the number one issue is equity because
Diane, you should mute.
Mary, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Just,
We're seeing what you're sharing.
seeing it.
Can you hear anything?
No.
You, we want to hear you.
Oh. Okay, so there's lots of work to be done, guys. Okay, I'm gonna take that off so I don't hear myself. Okay, so what's going on? It's a lot of issues with equity. We've got national teams, state teams. I'm the chair for the state food, soil, and ag team. What most people don't realize is that in California, 25% of our land is agriculture. It's a $50 billion industry. We provide more than 50% of the fruits and vegetables that are eaten in the United States come from California. So it's a big issue. It's a big issue that's on the national level as well. And it's a big issue here in Palo Alto, which is land use and land management, and that ties directly back to housing. So I'm really sorry I messed up my presentation, but I really encourage people to join our local priorities this year. I actually called up the wrong PowerPoint. Sorry about that. Are the decarbonization or electrification of buildings. And this is all part of the SCAP. And to ensure it's done in an equitable manner. And I think people know we have a very high rental rate here in Palo Alto. So it's great that new homes are being electrified, but what are we doing about the older homes? Because they will have to get there. And then the other issue is understanding food justice, food equity, your carbon footprint of food. So the source of your food, the labor that went into it, and then what is the carbon footprint of it? Because food equity and food justice are huge issues in the United States and around the world. So I encourage everyone also on March 10th, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead of the planning committee here or program committee, but everyone come on March 10th. It's the luncheon series. We're going to have somebody from the city discussing the SCAP and decarbonization or electrification of buildings. What does that mean to you? Because it really does mean something to you. And also somebody from Actera will be discussing food and food equity issues. So that's it. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and really sorry for the bad presentation.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Can we make comments?
Are there questions for Mary?
I have a comment from Mary.
Yes, thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, I just read the other day that the rainy season in California is now predictably much later than it used to be, which means the fire season is extended. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that climate change is now in process, that the rainy season is now much later, was kind of astonishing to me. Yeah.
So that's a great point, Jeannie. And, you know, this is raised in the climate action plan, which has been put together by the state of California. I don't think it's any shock to anyone to know that California is truly a leader in the world in this. And one of the things we talk about is California is planning for climate smart agricultural practices is what we fund. And that includes adaptation. So our climate is changing. So we're not trying to say, and some of that may be helping ag alter their crops, right? Change their crops. What are the tools they need to continue to support the land and continue to support agriculture? And as hard as it is here in California, it's even worse once you go south of, you know, as you get closer to the equator, and it's just, you know, it's a huge issue. So thank you, Jeannie, for raising that, because part of climate change is adaptation. Those are part of the strategies.
Thanks.
And I can talk about the other issues. I'm partial to food, soil, and ag.
Mary, can you say a few things about how easy it is to join the state league on this issue?
It is so easy to join the state on any of these issues because really all you have to do is sign up for the Google, I can send it to somebody, but basically you end up on the email list. You're going to just start getting all the information and the conversations that are going on about this. Then you can, jump in with a comment or, information that you have. If I will say, if the strings go on too long, people say, hey, take it offline. But then if you join a team, and I have a lot of people on my team, I have both the state team and the national team who really come just to listen, right? And then we have people who are very active. They're coming to listen, to learn, and maybe think, well, maybe this is something that could impact my community. Everything from food waste, food loss, which is what Second Harvest focuses on, which is getting food from the fields, the Second Harvest, and then also from local private farms or private estates, food waste, soils, healthy soils. Everyone, we will be hosting Kiss the Ground nationally to discusses the carbon cycle. And then of course, here in Palo Alto, a lot of people know so much about restoration of baylands and these areas, and those areas are natural carbon sinks, meaning they take the carbon from the air and actually sequester it into the ground. And so part of Governor Newsom's initiative is he called for, I think it was a 5-fold increase in funding to combat wildfires. They did come to a memorandum of understanding finally with the federal government. A lot of people know that most of those lands that were caught on fire are actually federally managed lands. Okay, so that's a big point of contention with Trump that hopefully is gone now. And well as an increase in restoration for chaparral, savanna grasslands, wetlands, and a few other areas. 90% of California is working in natural lands, okay? Most of those are privately held. So this means if we're going to get people to be working on these issues, which is creating greater carbon sinks, then we really need to pull in private funding. The cities has to work, the county has to work. It has to be a priority. Urban green spaces, that's another carbon sink. So that's it. I went on and on. But definitely join a state team just to learn more, just tune into the conversation. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Okay, our next up is Civics Education Committee.
Janet, you want to come off mute and lead? You're on mute, Janet. You're on mute. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Just to bring you up to date on what a bad year we've had because we were staying at home. There are 10 people who have signed on to our committee, but we will need many more. And I'll explain that in a little bit. Basically, our committee is dealing with adults, but we had one person who wanted to work with youth, and that's Jen, and she'll be explaining that as soon as I'm finished. The adult and youth organizations that we will be approaching, and the reason we're doing both is because there are some organizations that are not in Pali High School area. And so we will be approaching those youth organizations. The Alto Housing, I'll be able to do classes in all of their locations, and that has been confirmed. We've had a few churches that were contacted last year, but now we'll have to recontact them to get rolling. We're gonna start doing some of that this month in terms of training our volunteers to what they will do in the teaching component. And in the teaching component, that'll be conducted through iCivics. There's no hard work. They've got it all down. You can just go online and get the particular topic and any puzzles or games that you can find that will augment your class studies. There have been some churches that have been contacted, and one of them is my own church, LDS, and they have agreed to do 4 sessions per year. We know that this first session won't be able to be held, but we'll start in the second session to hold those classes at the church. Number 3 would be community organizations, and we'll just need to put more of an emphasis of some of our volunteers going out and approaching them. And there will be some carryover, and where we find that they'll do some classes, I'm going to also suggest to them that we have the like parent committee come over and talk to them about the league. And we've done that once before and think worked quite well. So we'll continue to do that. Our 4th thing would be working on iCivics class structure. We've kind of ferreted that out, but we'll do local government, county government, state government, federal government, and the Constitution. Those will be part of the classes that we offer. This month, as I stated, we'll be doing training for to use our iCivics material so that we don't go out cold, that we'll be well informed and make everything go more smoothly. We'll be assigning team members as teachers or community liaisons. And the community liaisons will be the people who will be going out basically talking to churches or organizations to get them involved in iCivics. And like I stated before, that our major projects have always been concerning voting. And voting is not going to help if people who go to the polls are clueless what they should be voting on. So that's a part of what we want to include in the training of local government, county, state, and federal, so that we have a more educated electorate going out and casting their votes. One of the other things that we will institute will be maybe a couple times a year is social for the community participants so they can get together, and that will even broaden our voter education emphasis and our community civics emphasis. And that's it.
Are there questions? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, so let me pick up from where Janet leaves off. I'm delighted to be working with Rachel Casey, teacher in the Palo Alto Unified School District. Came into the program in late summer. By early fall, we had sort of formulated what do we want to do with our student committee, and we actually had our formal kickoff just this past week. We have 8 students that have signed up so far between Gunn and Pally. It is focused on the high school level. Rachel and I do have accounts now on iCivics, so we can use the modules that Janet's talking about. Anybody can sign up for free. They're very neatly packaged. And in fact, for those that were interested in starting education earlier, there are modules for the grade schools as well, although my focus right now with Rachel is in the high schools. One of the things that was also passed last fall is what's called the State Seal of Civic Engagement. It was approved by Tony Thurmond in September. We have included that in the checklist of items that we'd like our students to look at and pursue. And we will draw on iCivics modules, in fact, to help them improve their understanding of the US, California Constitution, functions of governments at the local level, tribal government structures, democratic principles and concepts. So we have all that educational material. But at the end of the day, what the seal calls on students to do is identify a project, which they will choose in the coming weeks, to promote democracy and civics engagement in the community. And so I'm very excited to see what the students come up with there. We are also promoting the rollout of the documentary the Reunited States. I hope you've seen that in the voter that came out from Hannah on Monday, I believe it was. We have 100 seats available for individuals to sign up, view the documentary, which is about 75 minutes in your home, and then join us in a panel discussion. Panel discussion will be supported by 2 students, and I have 1 adult signed up, I think, and I'm looking for 1 more league member, maybe 2, to serve on that panel, and we will be following the program that's been outlined by the promoters of this documentary to encourage basically civil discourse and civics education in our communities going forward, and particularly at a time when, you know, as I said in our video, the first 3 Wednesdays of January 2021, there was an insurrection in the Capitol on the 6th. There was the second impeachment of the 45th president, which will proceed next week, and the inauguration of the 46th president. And so we talked in our kickoff meeting about never was there a time when engagement, as Janet talked about, never was there a time when we want our citizens to understand how our democracy works and the role that each of us has to play in healing the wounds and building bridges. And so that's really a key theme that Rachel and I are very excited about leading with the students. So if you're interested, I am looking for 1 or 2 more league members to sit on that panel. We'll have a pre-meeting on Zoom before that kicks off. And I want to encourage every league member to sign up for the program on the 16th so you can get access, you can get free access sponsored by our league to the actual documentary. So I'll take any questions or feedback or hands raised to be on the panel. Is that a hand raised to be on the panel, Jeannie?
No, it's a, are you aware of this book created by the League of Women Voters, the Guide to California Government, League of Women Voters from California? Ellen Forbes and I went around and took some of these books to, how can I, does that work? Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Ellen Forbes and I went maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and handed these out at local schools. It was, or we went in 2016, it says.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while, but
that's great.
It's a fantastic resource. And I'm sure we could get many more, if that would help.
Yeah, that's great, because one of the components of the SEAL and the study list is knowledge of the California state constitution and how the government works there. So that would be very interesting. Thank you, Jeannie. So I'll write to you and Ellen F. offline.
Just one last request. Anyone listening to our session today can also send me an email if they want to participate with doing the classwork and the outreach to community organizations.
Yeah, just does everybody have access to Jen's or Janet's email? If not, can you guys want to put it in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Janet?
Yes.
People.
Yeah, and thanks, who called that out, Ellen Smith, that the voter that came out, hopefully you all got that from Hannah on Feb 1. My email is there, but I'll add it to the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That was really inspiring. Next, we have up the local election reform task force.
I'm going to share my screen. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Kalinsky, a member of the board and of the local campaign finance reform team. I'd like to ask my co-speaker, Gail, to introduce herself.
Gail, you're muted.
Okay. There we go. So just one quick second, I'm having trouble finding the other script here. Let me start by saying my name is Gail Price. I'm a member of the team, and I'm also a former elected official with direct experience in campaigning and being elected, as well as fundraising. Okay, now going ahead here. The local campaign finance reform group is a small group of the League of Women Voters. We've been meeting to investigate the process, which includes many elements. The members are Lisa Ratner, Gail Price, Elizabeth Wheel, Karen Kalinsky, with an advisor from the Common Cause, who is Avni Desai.
In the recent 2020 election, candidates for the Palo Alto City Council raised over $400,000 among the 9 candidates who were accepting donations, with one of the candidates raising over $88,000. Candidate campaign financing has been growing over the last several election cycles, and the expenditures are much higher than neighboring cities. As you can see on the slide, Mountain View's 9 city council candidates raised a combined total of about $147,000 while adhering to an expenditure limit of $27,000 per candidate.
Yes, are we advancing?
No, you're still on this slide.
Okay, just a second here. Just 1 minute, I'm having some trouble here. Okay, let's see here. Okay, based on a review of Palo Alto campaign donations and costs, the record demonstrates that candidates continue to rely on city-wide fundraising strategies that include personal resources and modest and much larger donations from individuals and groups both within and outside of Palo Alto. Without some way to limit campaign financing, those with substantial personal resources, those without substantial personal resources may not be able to run successfully or may have to rely on, they have to rely on larger donations from a few donors, which can raise a concern about the possibility of undue influence during and after the campaign.
Within the last decade or more, many cities have introduced various direct and indirect means of campaign finance reform. 3 examples of reforms are voluntary campaign limits and expenditures, like Mountain View, the use of publicly funded campaign vouchers, like Seattle, and the creation of election districts within the city. These types of reforms have tended to encourage increased voter turnout and enabled a more diverse field of candidates to run for office. Both of these outcomes promote greater civic engagement in our democracy.
If approved by the board, we will continue a short-term task force to identify other organizations and individuals who would be willing to participate in a representative 7-person study group focusing on options for Palo Alto City Council campaign finance reform. This study group would include 1 representative from the Palo Alto League. We will keep you updated on our progress in the voter. If you would like to join the team at this stage in our journey, please send an email to lwpaoffice@gmail.com with the subject line reading, "Attention, Local Campaign Finance Reform." We hope you will join us. We believe this is a very important issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention and your interest.
Okay. I guess you guys have to stop sharing. There you go. Are there questions for the local finance campaign reform task force?
I'm just glad you're there.
Nancy?
You're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind Gail and Karen, thank you very much for this work, by the way, that to win, it looks like you do have to raise about $100,000 if you are not endorsed by certain newspapers, etc. And also there's the combination of campaigns that happen now where there's slates running. So maybe you have a campaign limit, but if you bundle your campaign with others, that amplifies. So I just wanted to see if you were.
Nancy, we lost your last comment.
The addressing of running as a slate so that you can combine your efforts and reach the $100,000 in order to get your message out through the media outlets, etc. And I just wanted to alert you to that because that is a different way of trying to impact voters.
Should I respond?
Yes, please, Gail.
Okay, sure. Hi, Nancy. Thank you. Yes, we are certainly aware of that. And one of the advantages of this task force is to really look at how other cities have addressed precisely the issue that you're talking about. So there are lots of different ways of dealing with this. No one approach is the panacea, but it is our belief that it's important for us to examine alternatives to bring some sanity to the process in Palo Alto.
I have a question. It's Carrie Templeton.
Yeah, Carrie.
Did you guys determine what it would take for campaign finance to go into effect in Palo Alto? Is that just a council majority vote, or?
I'm sorry, can you say your comment again?
Did you identify what it would take to get campaign finance reform? Is that just a council majority vote?
It basically depends. We're at the preliminary stages here. It basically depends on what we plan to do. So, for example, and if other members of the task force agree, in Mountain View, their issue of voluntary campaign limits and expenditures was an action taken by the city council. 2 subsequent city councils actually put that in place. There are other methods which would require and might require a citizen initiative. It might require taking this issue to the voters. So it depends on which aspect you're looking at and what that requires and as it relates to a charter city. So my answer is it depends, which is a terrible answer, but that is true. And there are lots of different techniques that have been used successfully.
Thank you, Gail.
Are there other questions?
Megan has her hand up.
No, Raven does.
I think we both do. Raven, go first.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I previously ran for city council last year. I was on a kind of slate with Carrie and Steven. So just addressing slates, which Nancy kind of touched on. It's really complicated. It's extremely complicated. And that's why we decided not to do the official slate where we would be on the ballot together. Yes, that would be better and easier financially, but when it comes to voting and getting someone to vote for your entire slate, that makes it extremely difficult. I mean, all 3 of us lost, but I think that we still would have possibly done worse than we did. I'm sorry. I don't know why I have allergies today and I've been inside. But it makes it harder because if someone, so like if me, Carrie, and Stephen were on the ballot together, if someone didn't want to vote for Stephen or just me or just Carrie, then they would not vote for the whole thing, for the whole slate, likely. So it makes it a little harder to get the support that you need, especially when you're running in a, I don't want to say small town election, but kind of, and especially when you're running against as many incumbents and people who were more well known in the community than we were. And as far as the finance reform, I think that that's extremely necessary. It was really hard, and it was really hard to do in general, but it was also very like kind of morally difficult for me to ask all these people for financing, especially when we're in the middle of a pandemic. People have lost their jobs. There were people who donated to me who had previously, like recently lost their job. And I'm like, no, please let me return this to you. And they're like, no, I want you to win. But it's like, that's the predicament that we're in because they want the candidates that they support and who represent them to win. And they know that we're competing against these people who are getting developer money and literally like $10,000, $15,000 from a single person. So this is something that's really necessary. I was speaking with Lisa Gaucher in East Palo Alto. She's an East Palo Alto councilwoman, and she was talking about the way that they do their fundraising. They have to raise so much less money than we did, like maybe $5,000 in order to do their whole race. There are limits to how many, Jeannie, there are limits to how much a single person can donate. And like there are so many things that we can set in place to make it so that it's not as difficult moving forward. And of course, being endorsed by papers help, but I'm not sure. I feel like a lot of Palo Altans are starting to lose faith in the local media, the local papers, especially given a lot of the issues that we saw this election with the mercury. But that's a whole completely different issue, and I would love to see this change. It's ridiculous and it's very elitist also, in my opinion, to expect us to be seen as about, like there are people that I would call for donations, and if I didn't have enough money raised already, they wouldn't donate to me because they felt like I wasn't a valid enough candidate because the other candidates were raising so much more. So there are a lot of issues. I could literally talk to you about this all day, but I don't want to take up all of your time. So please take my statement into consideration.
I'd like to make a quick comment just to reassure everyone that one of our goals here is to talk to recent candidates and learn from their lived experience. We are not going off, into left field here. We want to talk to people who have real experience about this to inform the kinds of steps we would consider. So I just wanted to mention.
So I just have a structural question. I love this as a priority, and it is just super clear from your presentation what you're trying to do. And I love that you're a short-term committee. And my structural question is, we have committees that have been committees for years and years, and then we have priorities we do every year. And can we structurally hone in on real specific goals that a given committee has for that next year? Like electrification got raised by Mary. I feel like if we're going to have priorities, we should have committees that follow those priorities, and those committees should have, this is what's going to be different a year from now, or what we're going to work on to make a difference a year from now. Because we tend to pick these priorities. I remember a few years ago was mental health. I can't even remember anything we accomplished. I don't think we accomplished anything. So that's just my question. How can we structure ourselves once we come up with these? And I love this one. It's just, it has everything to do with democracy and what we're trying to do. So thanks, Karen and Gail.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Lisa.
I want to just clarify how we got to the structure of what this local election financing reform is, how we got there. And we got there because we consulted with Common Cause, who's done this sort of organizing in many, many different communities. And they said, this can't just be a committee of the League of Women Voters. It has to be a widely community-based committee, and it can't be too big. So the focus of our task force is to just identify what directions we think we want to go to, and then reach out to other members of the community who represent other organizations or communities of interest in the city, so that when it comes before the city council, it's a community supported initiative, not just from the League of Women Voters. So if any of you have any ideas about who we should be trying to bring in to this community-based election reform organization yet to be formed, please let us know.
I see 3 hands raised, Lisa, Liz Ness, then Ellen Smith, and then Mary Okiki.
Now, Liz.
Yeah. Liz, can you unmute?
I'm unmuted, Nancy.
There you go. Okay,
You want me to speak now? I know you've got several. So if just bear with me for a minute as somebody who has run often and actually raised a lot of money. We internally have tried very hard to get to campaign finance. It's extremely difficult. To begin with, it's voluntary, and it has to be voluntary. That's the law. But we've gone through this many times with our city attorney. But secondly, the community right now is very divided between growth and no growth. And there are those in the community who are willing to make enormous donations. A couple of years ago, the donations were $60,000 per candidate. It becomes incredibly daunting, but the public doesn't see it for whatever reason. That was 2016, and that was a real surprise to me. The elections in Palo Alto have become very different from what they were, what I can remember in the 90s and the early part of this century. There is far less individuality and more coming together as a slate. But when you come together as a slate, you are able to advantage those in the slate because of the additional money that comes in. I admire this group. I admire the league taking this on. It is such a tough issue. I've spent hours talking with Mountain View about how they did it, and it simply was done. That was, they made a decision, put it on their agenda, and voted for it. But that means that those who are running have to buy into the $27,000. I can't tell you how wonderful it would be if we could adopt that and make it stick. So right now, there isn't much of an appetite for it on the current, it's certainly no appetite on the current council. Thank you.
See, Ellen, do you want to unmute and go ahead? And then Mary after Ellen.
Okay, I just want to say in response to Megan's point about how we have had a tendency to adopt issues for emphasis and then fail to actually do anything about it. And someone's pointed out, yes, we have to have really objective things. The other thing is you have to have people who want to do it. And so if you are promoting an issue, then really think hard about what you would do. Would you be on a committee? If you think this is a really great idea, please put yourself forward to get involved in it. Otherwise, it may very well not happen. We have some wonderful people on these committees, but I'm sure they need all the support and participation they can get. So if you care about an issue, stand up.
Go ahead, Mary.
Oh yeah, so thanks so much. So really couldn't be a more important issue, I think. If we can do it locally, then we can sort of pass that up, I would hope. This can be done. And then I really want to echo what Lisa said about leveraging what other organizations are doing. So we do not reinvent the wheel all the time. And in fact, a lot of those organizations have funding, and they actually have people dedicated for outreach and creating some of these materials. So I think if we're not leveraging the expertise of others, we're really missing out on a really valuable resource. So I fully support that.
Okay. Okay, I guess that anyone else want to speak on local election financing reform before we move on to the next committee? Yes, Gail.
Yes, I would say if people have ideas about partnering organizations or individuals, but they are not interested in signing up to be part of this fantastic committee, please just forward your suggestions. You know, you don't have to sign up for, you know, the next 2 years. If you have these ideas right now that you think may be useful to us. Thank you.
Right.
And thank you for
Yeah,
listening.
exactly. So a lot of you here, this is a League of Women Voters membership meeting, but a lot of you are members of other organizations. And if those organizations would be interested in joining a coalition for local election reform, let us know. Other cities have had people from, you know, the local captains of the sports teams. And that was an important interest group in certain cities. So think about what else you are involved with, and see if they might be interested in local.
Or even if you have the names of some individuals you think would be a great addition to the study group going forward.
Okay, the next topic is our Responsible Gun Ownership Committee. Take it away.
Great. Okay, let me share my screen. Go and present. All right, here we go. So I'm Hillary Glenn, and before I hand it over to Stacy, I want to note that both climate, which is the other team I'm on, or natural resources, and the gun safety teams are great focus areas for the League of Women Voters of Palo Alto because they have a big educational element. And so lots of opportunities for us to do really well on that front. So with that intro, Stacy.
Hi, I just want to make sure I am on.
I can hear you.
You can see me and hear me? Okay, great, thank you. So hi, thanks Hillary for the intro. Yeah, I'm Stacy Ashland, and Hillary and I are the co-chairs of the Responsible Gun Ownership Committee. Our mission is to educate local residents about gun violence prevention and to advocate for gun safety policies in Palo Alto. We're going to give you a brief overview of our accomplishments as well as our plans going forward. Hillary, it's over to you.
Okay, we did much better on our video, so just excuse our dropping the ball here. All right, so here's what we accomplished in the last couple of years. In spring of 2019, we organized an educational event on the California's Gun Violence Restraining Order, GVRO, and this is the law that enables individuals to request the temporary removal of a firearm from a person who is deemed by them to be dangerous to themselves or others. We had experts from the Stanford Law School, Stanford Medical Center, the Giffords Law Center, and the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office participate in the event. And then in the fall of 2019, we met with Palo Alto Police Department Chief Bob Johnson. We got to get his support for safe gun storage in Palo Alto. Additionally, we confirmed that the Palo Alto PD had placed processes into their police manual to describe how their officers could swiftly implement a GVRO when needed. Stacey.
And last year in 2020, we also established partnerships with other local organizations working on this issue. These include the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence and also Moms Demand Action, which is a nonpartisan group that provides education and advocacy on public safety measures for gun violence prevention. We're also collaborating with the PTA Council on parent education on this issue. Additionally, we identified a city council member who was interested in sponsoring a safe firearm storage ordinance, and working with the Giffords Law Center, we provided her with model law wording. And in December of last year, City Council unanimously referred the adoption of a safe firearm storage ordinance to the city attorney. Next slide. So everybody knows, well, we know that California has some of the strongest gun laws in the country. So this may not seem like a matter of concern here. However, the Safe Firearm Storage Ordinance, which we just talked about, is modeled after similar ordinances that have passed in 23 cities and 3 counties in our state. And it's an example of how we can address gaps in our state's gun laws, such as people just assume that it is required to lock your gun up safely in your home, but unless it's a city ordinance, it's not enforceable. So by partnering with organizations like Moms Demand Action and their Be Smart program, we can increase awareness and provide education about gun violence prevention, including suicide prevention. And we may think that our community is immune from gun violence because of factors like our education levels and low crime rate, but in reality, our demographics are not all that different from Newtown, Connecticut, or Parkland, Florida. So that's why education and advocacy on this issue really matters. Back to Lori.
So what are our goals and actions for 2021? So we're going to continue on the tracking progress on the safe storage ordinance that Stacy mentioned, and we'll be ready to rally our allies to show up at City Council when the ordinance is on their agenda for approval. Secondly, we're going to keep our focus on education. That's been super important, and we're going to keep doing that, partnering, as we mentioned, with people like Moms Demand Action. Thirdly, because so many of California's strong gun laws were initially, adopted at the local level, we're going to continue to monitor legislation efforts across the state to look for other ordinances or initiatives that we want to advocate for here in Palo Alto. So collaboration is also very big. We want to keep those partnerships and alliances going because that's helping us meet our goal. And finally, I wanted to note that the goals and actions we have taken as a committee over the last couple of years really are driven by what the members are interested in. So if you were to join this group and had a very strong area you wanted to focus on in terms of gun safety, that would absolutely be something that would drive what we do in our focus area for the year ahead.
So if you're interested in learning more about what we are doing as a committee and why we're doing it and how you can help with gun violence prevention here in our community, please consider joining our team or at least touching base with us to hear more about the issues and the actions that we are taking. We usually meet the second Thursday of the month, and our next meeting will be on the Thursday, February 11th at 7 p.m. We invite you to consider joining us at this or a future meeting. So if you have any questions at all or comments, please email me at sashland@gmail.com or Hillary Glan at hglan@gmail.com. Thanks.
Any questions we can answer? All right, we've left you all breathless with anticipation. Back to you, Lisa. And I just wanted to comment that it's been great to have Lisa on our team. It's been great to have Alice on our team. We're the only team, I think, with 2 lawyers. And I think we also have the greatest age spread between Katie and Alice Smith. So that also gives us a nice diversity on the team.
Okay, great. If there are no questions for responsible gun ownership, and I might note that responsible gun ownership was not we didn't call that out as a priority issue for local action, but we had a group of people who were very interested in the issue and they took very focused action on what they were interested in. And the league has a policy that we can take action under.
And there is a lady at the state level who is also focused on the issue of responsible gun ownership. But even she says that the big opportunity for us is really at the local level to improve our laws and educate people here.
Okay, so now what happens is we'll have a
Lisa, just a sec. Shouldn't Jeannie report on racial equity work?
Jeannie, go report on racial equity work.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Last June, after I witnessed the 8 minutes and 43 seconds of a policeman bending on the neck of George Floyd, I decided that I needed to leave voter services in the great hands of Kathy and Liz and to focus on anti-racist work in Palo Alto schools. It was a great idea, but of course, school being not what it is at the moment, that students out there and teachers out there makes it kind of difficult. But I made progress in this area. So I met with the assistant superintendent of equity, diversity, and inclusion, Lana Conaway. And at her suggestion, I made some short videos of the kind of work I do in schools. And she was intending to show them to her leadership team and to have her leadership team meet me. But they haven't, their meetings haven't been regular, but we're going to do that at some point. I met Miguel Fritaria, who has a position to help students who are desperately needy in one way or another. He has a group of 10 students at Pali who have been coming to school during the COVID closure. They've been coming every day, and he's been taking care of whatever it is that they need. He and a group that he has, and so he and I talked together, and he suggested that it sounded like I may like to get my hands back in teaching again, and to actually be present with that group of 10 desperately needy youngsters. So that's something that is in the offing. And then the third connection that I made is with the 2 teachers of the junior class of the social justice program at Pali. And the history teacher and I have had conversations about something that we actually may enact when school begins again and students come back into the building. I had suggested that I think one of the reasons that that the continent of Africa gets no respect, in part is because the old maps of the world, called the Mercator projection, are such where they took the globe and they pushed the bulge of the globe flat into the screen, with everybody else. And so it reduced the relative size of the continent of Africa. And so you can now get something called the Equal Area Map. And I had one in New York when I was a teacher's college there. I had one at Stanford, hung outside my office there. And it always caused a major surprise because the United States can fit in the Sahara Desert. You can put 4 United States in the continent of Africa. And not knowing that is always a surprise to people. And so I'd suggested to Mary, the history teacher, that it could be a wonderful 2-day curriculum where we bring the 2 maps and we have a conversation about the social changes that might begin to occur once people understand how big the continent of Africa is for the world, right? So we have a plan to work on that whenever kids come back. That's as far as I've gone so far. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Kathy.
Great. Thank you, Jeannie. Or does anybody have any questions for Jeannie about racial equity work?
Trina Lovacek has her hand.
Trina.
Go, Trina. Unmute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that same thing apply to the continent of South America as well as Africa in relative size to the United States?
No, you're right to raise it. So it does distort the size of the north of South America compared to the south of South America. It does.
Yeah.
I focused on Africa because it is people of African descent who are so discriminated against all over the place. Yeah.
Well, I understand why you're focusing on Africa, but there's a lot of brown people in South America that are, discriminated against also.
It is the truth.
Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Trina. I'm going to take it in my mind and bring it forth. Thanks.
On the issue of racial equity, I just want to point out that some leagues, including the San Francisco League, are using their observer corps, which are people who observe the workings of local boards and commissions, regional boards and commissions, state boards and commissions. San Francisco, they're observing the working of their local police commission to make sure that it is carrying out its job in a racially equitable fashion. We have an observer corps in our league, and Kevin has been observing the city council. Leslie Fish has been observing the city council, and Susan Owicki has been observing the city council, and Megan as well has been observing the city council. But we can have people observing other agencies and in the city. I think there is a policy and services, maybe Liz can confirm this, policy and services subcommittee is in charge of oversight of what happens with the how the police department deals with reports of force in the community, and how that's taken care of. We have an auditor, a police auditor, and there are some issues about whether that person has access to reports of unreasonable force coming from the police department. So there are ways that people can people in the league, if they want to observe what's going on with respect to criminal justice in the city of Palo Alto, the Observer Corps would be a fine way to do that. So let us know if you're interested in that. Yes.
There are 2 hands raised right now, Stacy Ashlin and then Diane Rolfe, and then I see Trina waving her hand again. So Stacy, would you like to unmute?
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, Jeannie, I'm sorry, but I got a little bit confused, and I was wondering if you could clarify a bit on racial equity locally and how that translates from the issues in the globe projection, and what that applies to locally, what issues you're working on or advocating, and what we can do to help on that.
So beginning with the notion that it is people of African descent, particularly who have been badly mistreated forever, they're the ones who were killed by being hung from trees, and there was a noose outside the Capitol when it was invaded the other day. And so anything that can educate people in ways that they don't know, I believe that education can be helpful. And so the point would be to have these teenagers at Pali for 2 days to begin to study this, and then to think about and talk about and discuss the ways in which this might influence how people feel about Africa. Or they may discover the ways in which Africa is not mentioned. You know, so all we hear about COVID in Africa at the moment is South Africa. And there are 50 countries in the continent of Africa, right? And so it's that kind of raising awareness that may be useful for trying to dismantle some of the racism that exists. Is that helpful, Stacy?
Yes, great. So basically you're starting, like, is it sort of on a small scale, a pilot scale, like working with some students at Pali, and then it's something that we could expand from there to include more young people and as well as adults?
You know, that might, I haven't taken it beyond working with Mary. So I haven't made contact with other teachers, but I would love it. As I said, as at Stanford, you know, with the teacher education program there, I had that map hanging on the wall outside my office. So when people were waiting to see me, they could see that, and I'd put arrows, you know, to see that. And so, yeah, I just think that when people are educated about issues, it really helps their thinking forward.
Yes, and it's also an extremely hot issue from the young people's perspective as well. Like the teachers have their curriculum to follow, but it is definitely like one of the top issues that I hear from young people around here. So I appreciate you doing that. I'll talk to you more offline.
Thank you, yeah. While we're at it, I would love to restructure the whole science curriculum because of climate change. And say, instead of doing physics and chemistry and biology in different years, and maybe only a couple of them, that we need integrated science, because that's what climate change is about. It's a connection between all of those branches of science. Yeah.
And maybe Diane, Rolf, and we're reaching the noon hour. So we were told that people would start fading away after 2 hours. So Lisa.
Yeah. Let's hear from Diane.
Unmute.
Diane, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you. When I was a young teacher, we used to have an assistant superintendent of multicultural studies, and we're only 5% of the population. And the lack of equity, the racism, the caste system we have in this country has to be looked at, and people become sensitive to it and to the rest of the world. We used to do things that we no longer do, and we need to have whether it's under housing, whether it's under the environment, we have to work together and treat each other equally as a species. And we have to start changing how people look at the rest of the world. So Jeannie, more power to you. Blessings on you and everyone here. We have a lot to do.
Thank you, Diane. Trina.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Observer Corps, that somebody should be observing the school board. I think that would be an important thing, that there should be at least one person observing the school board, if not more.
Great. Well, we've got 31 participants in this meeting. I hope somebody raises their hand. We have a reporting form that we can use. Yes. Jean.
I'm raising my hand to be on the an observer for the school board.
Right. Great. Terrific.
Good. That's great, Jeannie.
Thanks.
Okay, since we're getting towards the end, we have gone through all the local issues through their committees, housing and transportation, climate change through the Natural Resources Committee, the Civics Education Committee, the local election reform task force. Maybe I should share again. So, okay. Local election reform task force, responsible gun ownership, and we also heard from Jeannie on racial equity work. Are there, aside from these issues, does anybody want to propose any other local issues that they are excited about that they think we should be working on? Or is, okay, I take it.
Karen has her hand raised.
Karen.
I'd like to add equitable recovery in the schools and economy locally.
Okay. Great. That's a great one. Anybody else want to add something?
One more thing, there's a 21-day racial equity challenge. Do you all know about it? For Palo Alto, a 21-day racial equity challenge that's coming out of Lana Conaway's office and so on. There's a program they post every day, and this is going to be for 21 days, specifically to address racism, prejudice, and systemic racism. So if you don't know about it, yeah, let me know or go look for it. The 21-day racial equity challenge. I strongly recommend it to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeannie. At this point,
Lisa?
yes.
I don't know if you can see him raising my hand. I'm having technical problems doing it virtually.
Okay.
Is it all right if I speak up now?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to talk about, I'm really glad somebody mentioned in the chat about adding some something for the economic side of COVID recovery, but I really wanted to encourage us and see if there's interest in the health side. You know, we have a lot of work to do locally to get everybody vaccinated and to make sure that people are getting their health needs addressed during this time. And it's just something I'm really passionate about. So I wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if that's more appropriate at the local level or if there's another level, but certainly the health side of COVID recovery too.
Right. Yes, and Carrie, you were talking about actually possibly starting a committee that would focus on that. So I don't know how.
Yeah, if there's interest, I would be excited about collaborating on that. So you're welcome to reach out to either the organizers of the league or to me directly, and we can figure out how to take an action and maybe start up a committee on healthcare related issues at the local and state level. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, also one of the things, so healthcare is being raised at a number of other local leagues as a priority issue. Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville has reactivated their healthcare committee. And if any of you are interested in that issue, I'm sure Carrie is the one to get a hold of and come up with a plan, a mission statement, and I think we're good to go. Even if it's not a priority, it'll be a priority for you guys. Okay.
I think Kathy has her hand raised. Kathy Miller.
Kathy,
you want to unmute?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what that would be in terms of advocacy, but maybe, I mean, it's fine to do it. I'm just not clear on what local advocacy would be around that, around healthcare.
Yeah, that'd be something for them to look into.
And just at a very, very specific answer to that question, there's a lot, there's actually an action that started 5 minutes ago in Mountain View, specifically to advocate for CalCares, which is our healthcare for all in California. But there's also outreach to our local representatives and all the same kind of advocacy that you would do for any other issue. You can start that at the local level, but specifically at the local level, our teachers are asking for vaccinations, and our parents are asking for plans on how to get kids back to school. And all those things really do tie back to healthcare and making sure that people are covered. And I would add one more thing. There's a women's issue here because healthcare is tied to employment, and for anyone that may have had to leave their job to take care of their kids during COVID, their coverage is tied to their spouse. So it's really important to understand that, you know, that has a tremendous impact on women and children and our community's overall health. So I think there's a lot of local aspects to tie that to. Thank you.
I think we have, don't we have national positions that would allow us to work on that? I don't think we need a local, I'm confused again about structurally what we're trying to do here, but I don't think we need a local priority on that. Because we can work on it because we have national positions. But am I wrong? I might be wrong.
Well, one of the things that the state, that for instance, Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville is looking at is having local pressure on state legislators to bring back the single payer bill that was vetoed, I think, by Governor Brown. So all that starts on a local level.
Also, our congressional representative is on the Health and Human Services Committee, I believe.
Okay. All right. At this point, I think if there's no more general discussion about what our local issues should be, or does somebody want to suggest what our local issues should be in a general discussion here? Should we go directly to the chat where you can enter your choices?
How many are we supposed to have? Is Kathy's just the list of?
Preferably 3, but the limit of 3 is really what the state's information, that's what they want. We can structure it the way we want. I don't think it should be too many because we'll never be able to figure out where to put our resources, but 3 to 4 would be fine. Plus, please indicate if you're willing to work on that issue. I think we have had all the committee chairs have said, please contact me if you're interested in this issue, please join our committee. So please indicate that you're interested in joining the particular committee or starting a committee that will work on it. We can't just throw these suggestions out and think the board's gonna do it. The board's not gonna do it. It's the members together with the board.
So Lisa, we have 2 raised hands. One is Jen Wangstaff,
yes,
and the other is Gail Price. So Jen, do you want to unmute and speak?
Yep, I'd like to speak. Given that the outline called for us to vote for top 3 in chat, and given the time on the agenda, I suggest we do the top 3. I've done this accordingly, and thank you to those that agreed to at least research further our civics engagement in the high school. So that would be my suggestion, given that we're actually over time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gail Price, do you want to unmute and?
Okay. Yes, a question, just a clarification question. I understand the issue of the 3 for the state, but locally, clarify for me, what is the universe of numbers we're dealing with locally? I'm not certain the way this conversation is right now.
I think right now we're only voting on our local initiatives. Isn't that correct, Lisa?
Yeah, we're just voting on local initiatives.
Right, priorities, not state. We've already done state. And so basically what you've seen presented, and if anybody wants, I think we still want to hear from anybody that has a burning issue that needs to rise up to the top. But at this point, we are over time.
Okay.
We have Ellen Smith and Gail. I'm going to put your hand down. Ellen, do you want to speak? But unmute first, please.
Yes. Just to say again, it's up to us if, for instance, responsible gun ownership has not been named as a priority in recent years, but we've had a group that wants to pursue it, and they're doing a good job. And we may not choose healthcare issues as a real local priority, but the league has strong positions on equitable, even universal healthcare. So if there's a group that wants to do it, there's no stopping. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, what do you want our league to be most seen as doing for the next year? What do you want our league to be seen? Sorry, league to be seen at out in the committee for the next year?
Yeah. So we actually do this program planning every year, but the next year it's going to be considering the national issues for emphasis. And at that point, we'll also review our local issues. So we tend to do our local issue review on a yearly basis. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to change it year to year. Of course, it depends on circumstances. We have this huge COVID economic emergency that's staring us in the face that we need to do something about. So, okay, so I think if there's nobody else that wants to discuss this, we should go to voting in the chat. Put in your chat what your issues are, and rank them if you can do so, and then put whether you're willing to work on those issues as well. Committee. And if you,
So we're gonna,
yeah, if you're not able to complete it now and you're thinking about it, send us an email.
and just so you know, we are recording this because we're going to allow members that were not allowed to come today to listen into what we've been doing. And then they will be voting not in chat, but they will send the vote to the League of Women Voters office Gmail account. So that's coming. And also just a final note, the convention this year will be the state convention, not the national convention. So the initiatives that come up through to the state, which we have already voted on, but any initiatives that we want to put some extra grease on, or if somebody wants to actively become involved in them, they will go to the convention floor for their priorities and goal setting as well. So that's something that sometimes people want to be involved in, but you have to be involved in a lot earlier than just the night before the convention. And we're going to leave this Zoom open, I think, for a few more minutes so people can vote. We're going to be recording it. And I personally would like to thank everybody for spending a Saturday morning with us. And I really appreciate all of the updates that we've received. It's amazing to get to see the League in action, listening to our advocacy work that we're doing in our local issues committee. Lisa, do you have anything more?
No, thanks. Thank you all for coming, and especially thank you to the committee chairs who did such good work in summarizing what they've been doing and what their goals are. I think it was very, very helpful.
Bye.
Bye.
Louise, I'm assuming we can stop recording now?
Can we keep the chat up in case people are still typing?